Next up is Iris Marie Bloom. Iris is a lifelong health educator, justice and peace advocate, and writer. She directs Protecting Our Waters, a small, agile, fracking-fighting grassroots group force born in Philadelphia in 2009. So, without, I'll let Iris take over.
So thank you very much for having me, and I wanted to give a big shout out to Anne, to Maria, to Kate, to the organizers of this conference, and to all the presenters and the endurance level of us in the room. Really a wonderful room. So I wanted to also thank the Haudenosaunee people whose land this is, and indigenous nations who have defended the land in the 3 campaigns that I'm going to talk about, including the Ramapo Lenape Nation, who, by the way, just got recognition by the state of New Jersey as existing as a tribe a few days ago, along with the Powhatan Lenape Nation, Nanticoke, and the Lenni Lenape people, of course, of Philadelphia, where Protecting Our Waters, my organization, was born. So we've been fighting fracking for 5 years in Pennsylvania, and now 5 years in New York. That means also fighting pipelines, plastics, and power plants. So I realized after practicing my talk a couple times that I'm talking about 3 major campaigns in 5 minutes each. No problem. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Pilgrim Pipelines campaign first. And for those of you that might not know, the Pilgrim Pipelines was a proposed pipeline, 2 pair of pipelines that would have taken Bakken shale crude oil from Albany down to Linden, New Jersey, and then a parallel pipeline bringing diesel and gasoline and great things like that back up. And of course, this would have been taken by oil train from the Bakken shale to Albany. Would have crossed 256 waterways along the route, including 2 pipelines going under the Hudson River twice. So it was completely nuts, but it was a very serious proposal. And we had a knockdown, drag-out fight with Pilgrim Pipelines, LLC, for 4 years. We had 72 organizations. We had a partner organization in New Jersey, and we won. So that's really important because we often don't celebrate our victories enough. It was hard to celebrate concretely because of the fact that Pilgrim Pipelines LLC just backed off. They just stopped moving their proposal forward. So there wasn't a dramatic moment where they were rejected and we could say this is good forever. So they could come back. But one of the tactics that I wanted to talk about is when you can't get a law passed, couldn't get a law passed that would just preclude Pilgrim Pipelines from existing. So we used resolutions as a really important tactic. And we had 33 different municipalities that we were working with, towns, cities, and villages. So I was going to have wonderful photographs of great activists and also the resolutions that we used for Pilgrim Pipelines, but I had a blue screen of death incident, so you're not seeing that. But I do have paper copies. If anyone needs a model resolution, these were very powerful. So even though they don't have teeth, they're used as a galvanizing tool. We would have public forums, we would do outreach, come to the town board meeting when this is going to be discussed. And town board meetings that usually have almost nobody in public comment period, we would pack the house with 100 people. It was very, very dramatic. So we would get the chance to educate, galvanize, do outreach, and get headlines. So we would do headlines before, headlines after, and despite never being in the New York Times that I know of, we generated, by the end of this campaign, we had a 35-page document that was just the headlines that we generated. And more than half of those were from passing resolutions. That was a way of getting the facts about this pipeline in the public view. The health harms, the climate harms, the air harms, the water harms. So that was very powerful. So decision makers also would be on record. So we had unanimous after unanimous after unanimous decision. And sometimes they would debate late into the night. We'd have decision makers in Albany City Council, for example. They were debating until midnight about this resolution to stop Pilgrim pipelines. And then they were unanimous because it was just an overwhelming amount of evidence that we had this was a horrible idea. Not that we don't lose sometimes when we know it's a horrible idea. So resolutions can be very powerful. I want to move on to plastics, which is another instance where we can use resolutions when we can't right away get laws. And resolutions, in this case, can help shift behavior and shift the culture. I want to talk for a minute before...
Is that right? That's not right.
What's that?
That's not the right view, I'm sorry. Let me just...
Oh yeah, no, that's it.
Yeah, that's
You might shrink it a little. But I want to talk just for a second about the downside, potential downside of resolutions, which is if you don't want to waste time. So if you have the ability to pass something that has teeth, always better off passing a law, working on something that will have teeth. You don't want to lose power. So you don't want to have a situation where you pass a resolution, let's say on plastic straws or any kind of plastic issue, and then the legislators or decision makers come back and say, oh, we did that already. Well, no, that was just a resolution. So you have to be kind of a situationalist, be strategic in deciding your tactic. But there was no chance we were going to get a law banning all single-use plastics in the town of Marbletown, which is what I would have loved to do. That's the town that I live in the Hudson Valley. So we started small with a plastic straw-free resolution. As far as I know, it was the first in New York State. And it's just an ask first resolution. But again, it has we got 7 restaurants to come to the town board meeting and give statements in favor of this. So we're galvanizing the business community. We were galvanizing the public, and we created some behavior change. So that was 2016. 2018, town of New Paltz, high school students started getting mobilized around the plastics issue. And as you probably know, we'll have more plastics than fish by weight in our oceans by 2050. So another whale just died a few days ago. You might have seen the images of the autopsy or of the whale that had over 88 pounds of plastic in its belly. It starved to death. So this has been happening for decades. We have 100,000 marine mammals dying a year. We have 1 million seabirds. So, but it's also a human health issue. I don't need to, you know what I'm talking about. I don't have to convince you. But in terms of the tactic, these high school students built a sea turtle, beautiful sea turtle, out of unrecyclable plastic, colorful, to illustrate the problem, and then unveiled it as a press event, and then went to the town council and said we want to have a resolution like Marbletown's and do plastic straw free, which means that restaurants cannot just keep putting straws in drinks without asking. It's an ask first resolution. It's a first step kind of thing. So then we started celebrating restaurants and establishments that were doing the right thing, and they were putting signs on their menu saying skip the straw, save the turtle. So then I wanted to get a law that would address all single-use plastics. I tried Woodstock, thinking Woodstock would be progressive. And they are now about to pass, they wouldn't do a law, but they're doing a resolution on single-use plastic cups, straws, stirrers, cutlery, and single-use chopsticks and single-use coffee cups. Because as you may know, the single-use coffee cups have polyethylene lining, it's toxic, and it is virgin pulp. You're never going to have a reusable according to health law. So this is happening right now. So they're going to decide on this in April. Do you have the Woodstock one?
Oh, the next one? Sure.
Yeah. Again, sorry for the lack of colorful visuals. It's a lot of words today. But this is exciting because this will be unveiled on Earth Day. But I'm going to move on to third campaign, which is also very current, and having one against Pilgrim Pipelines, having one in New York State banning fracking, having protected the Delaware River Basin, that freed up more energy to work on power plants, fossil fuel power plants. So we had a fossil fuel frack gas power plant that was proposed for the town of Ulster, and that's in Ulster County. And the town of Ulster kind of wraps around the city of Kingston like a donut. It's a strange conservative town with no Environmental Conservation Commission on the ground and a real cash deficit. And it looked like a shoo-in. So without going into all the details, which I'd love to go into about the grassroots campaign, we really mobilized on this. And we actually defeated GlidePath, this company that wanted to do a frack gas power plant in the town of Ulster. Not only did we defeat them, but they then are submitting a battery storage only proposal, which I think might also be the first in New York State. That victory was, 2 months ago. And so then that freed us up. When I say us, I often mean me, to do a lot more work on banning or prohibiting any fossil fuel power plants. And so we have 3 steps that we've taken on that so far that are very concrete, and then hoping to really step up and get every town, village, and city in New York State to pass moratoria and using zoning code to prohibit fossil fuel power plants. So we won a moratorium in the town of Lloyd, which is a conservative town, and that was just this January. And they had been approached by the same company, GlidePath, to do a frack gas power plant in Lloyd. So we mapped out where the frack gas pipeline runs and realized that Lloyd had been approached. So a Scenic Hudson resident wrote a letter, a very effective letter, saying, let's do a moratorium on fossil fuel power plants while we look at our zoning code. Then they're going to look at the zoning code and hopefully prohibit them completely. But meanwhile, City of Kingston is also reviewing their zoning code, and Marbletown, where I live, is about to propose a law to change the zoning, and this is a law. So it would remove 3 permitted uses from the existing zoning. There would no longer be any fossil fuel power plants allowed, no gas metering, no compressor stations. And at the same time, we are expanding the zone for solar and putting in a permit for microhydro. So literally taking out the bad stuff and putting in the good stuff. And this is under fairly conservative leadership. So I think it's really important to notice that we can get a lot done even when the leadership that we're dealing with is quite conservative. And again, as someone said earlier, you pitch your arguments about economy, health, wildlife, ecotourism, jobs. You pitch your argument for how you're going to be best heard. So those are 3 campaigns using resolutions, moratoria, and zoning laws creatively. And of course, a link that links them all together is this is part of the fight against fracking. Fracking is plastics industry is in bed with the fracking industry. It's all about climate. So I'm not sure, I was trying to talk fast and catch up on time.
Oh, you're sweet.
But that's pretty much what I wanted to offer. If anybody in the room wants to get paper copies of any of those resolutions or moratoria, I have them. If anybody out there watching the streaming or watching this later wants to just write me, but it's protectingourwaters@gmail.com. And it's Iris Marie Bloom. So let's fight the frack.